This program is brought to you by the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. We provide the professional expertise, tools, and resources to help you succeed. To connect with a business coach, call 502-625-0123 or email sbdcinfo@uky.edu. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Toolkit Tuesday. I'm Janet Flaw. I'm with the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in the Louisville office. I'm filling in for Dave today, and we're going to share a new tool with you provided by business coach Ann Shadle. I want to remind you that at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat feature that you can go in there now if you'd like to say hello and tell us where you're joining us from today. Also is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen where you can post your questions that Ann will answer at the end of today's event. You'll also receive on the screen at the end today a survey that will ask you to fill out for us and tell us how we did. You'll also receive that in a follow-up email tomorrow. So look for those things. In the meantime, let's go ahead and welcome Ann to the room and say happy Toolkit Tuesday to you, Ann.
Happy Toolkit Tuesday to you, Janet. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's the clouds are lifting and it's starting to see the sun out here. So I'm going to turn to you and step back and we'll get started.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the intro here. Well, hello, everyone. As Janet said, I'm a business coach with the Small Business Development Center in the Louisville office as well. And I'm excited to be sharing a good tool that I found here with everyone today. So I'm going to screen share and we will kind of jump in. So everybody can see my screen, I think, here. All right. So the tool today is called the Entrepreneur Time Tracker. And it's the idea here is to create some awareness and some structure around how you're managing your time as a small business owner, and then to use that to the benefit of the business ultimately. So that is kind of my intro here. So just a quick, I guess, a quick note of why I think that somebody could or should listen to me is I've been working in business for about 15 years, owned a couple of different restaurants and a catering company, and have done the business side of all of those organizations in addition to the coaching work that I do now with the Small Business Development Center. So the space from which I created this tool was my own lived experiences, and then seeing themes and similarities as I spoke with clients that were very similar to how things have gone for me. So it was out of that space of lived experience that seemed like I could make something that could help more than just myself. So kind of an overview of what my plan is for today is just to give, sort of explain like why I think this can be helpful in a more specific way, go over what the tool is itself and how to use it. And then I've got an exciting sort of finishing piece, which is I brought Tessa Maxwell on, who's a client who has used the tool and has really integrated it into her operations at her business. And so she's going to come on and share kind of how she started using it, how she's shifted and evolved with it, and how it's helped her business. So that's sort of our agenda for the day. So so just kind of jumping in here, again, the space from which I created this was this thing that happened to me for years where I would work a full day, 8, 10, 12 hours and know I had been busy the entire day, but I would get to the end of the day and I would say, did I do the most important things? And then even kind of beyond that is, what are the most important things for me to be directing my time towards as a small business owner? So the idea is that if this tool and this process can help give some clarity around those questions that I think many small business owners ask themselves. So what I have identified is, as far as I think, some basic time management issues that are consistent. Yes, as a small business owner, but I do think these apply broadly to really anybody who's working, which is, many of us. So my first sort of category of what I think is the time management problem is prioritization. So small business owners wear many hats within their organizations, and I think can be naturally drawn to the tasks that are potentially easiest to check off their to-do list, but not necessarily the priority A items. And what I define as a priority A or a priority one item is something that either brings in sales, decreases costs, or increases the net margin of the operations. So just, again, somebody's just kind of going towards what is the most accessible or the fastest thing to finish, rather than doing that prioritization process along the way. So another issue I see with time management is just kind of being disorganized and scattered, in that there's fires that come up, a person can't come in for a shift, we're about to lose a customer, and that becomes the thing that you devote your time towards, to the expense of other, sort of broader parts of the organization. So so trying to create some sense of organization and structure around a business owner's day and week, I think is really helpful. And then the third problem that I think that this tool can help with is this idea of intentionality around how you're using your time to kind of touch all the different elements of the business process. So I think small business owners are drawn to the areas that they have the most natural strength in doing, but they may potentially miss some other elements of the organization just because they're just doing what they know, but that's just leaving a wider gap. So maybe you're more drawn towards HR and marketing and less in the financial area. So you don't take the time to analyze monthly profit and loss reports and learn lessons, from that process. So again, the idea with this tool is that it can help to solve all three of these issues, as far as like prioritization, being more organized, and being intentional with how you're using your time. So so kind of jumping into what the time tracker hit is here. So a quick note, I guess, about sort of what the process of using this tool is. The first part of it is tracking everything you do for either a week or 2 weeks time. Then the second part of that is putting some labels on the different activities that you do. So once you've done that and you've got a good sample size of all the different kinds of things, or the bulk of the different kinds of things that you do running the business, you then go through, and I'll come back to some of these, then you go through and you make what is a consistent plan for how you're going to spend your time, thinking through things, again, from more of an objective perspective. And then also breaking out like project type activities. And again, I'll go through this in a lot more in depth here in a second, but just kind of a broad overview of what the tool is. So then kind of thinking through what are different projects that you need to do, and then creating more detailed outline on how the projects get implemented. So I'm gonna hop into the actual tool itself. So it's just an Excel spreadsheet, and a note to everybody here. So if you're interested to use this, all you need to do is send me an email after this presentation is over, and I will send this directly to you. And my email will be on the end of the screen, on the end of the presentation. So it pops up there at the end. So first, just kind of a set of instructions that goes through exactly what I just shared. So first, on the time tracking piece. So I said, track everything you're doing for a week or 2 weeks time. Essentially, you just want to get a real good sense of what are all the different things that you as the business owner are doing throughout the day, throughout the week, and even throughout the month, I guess, if there are certain things that you do only on a one time per month basis. So the first thought is you just write what the day is, what the start and end time and duration, just really trying to get a sense of how long does it take you to do that activity, and then just list the name of the activity. But something actually that Tessa had shared with me is that just by simply doing this, she was surprised at how long or short some of the activities took her, that we can often have poor expectations on how long something is going to take us. We're like, oh, that'll just take about 20 minutes. Well, then it ends up taking a full hour, but you didn't have that properly planned out in your day. So then you have something else that's backed up to it. And now you're stressed out trying to get that thing finished, right? So the idea is that you first say, oh, how long is this actually taking me to do? And then when you're planning for the future sort of consistent schedule, you allot the proper amount of time to actually finish that activity. So as far as the adding of these different labels to the different tasks that you're doing, what I say is either just track every activity that you're doing, and then at the end of the day, you put the labels on each different line item of what you did, or you wait till the end of the whole like week 2 week exercise and put them on after, like at the very end of it. So what are these different categories or labels that we're assigning to the things you're doing? So one is understanding like what business category that falls into, right? So I've got a list here up at the top that says the categories are core product work, customer service and sales, marketing and advertising, which would include social media, finances, human resources, and then just kind of daily operations. So I've listed a handful of things here: cleaning, going to the bank, putting tags on items if you're in a retail shop, et cetera, right? So just sort of like basic day-to-day things that need to happen with the business. So I think it's important to put the categories on because you want to make sure that you're doing something in all of the business categories throughout the week at the very least, if not on a monthly basis. So, because this is where I see people, I talk to clients who are, again, that's sort of the problem of like going towards just the things that you know and skipping whole portions of the business that you're not as familiar with. People will just miss, that they haven't done anything with finances because it's just not natural for them to understand their financial reports. And so they just skip it. So if a business owner were to fill this out and realize that nothing has been labeled with the category of finances, that to me would be an indicator of, okay, we need to make sure that you're carving out some time to look at financial reports. So in addition to putting a business category on the activity, then I've got 4 different priority ratings. And it's not that it's like 1 being the most important and 4 being the least important, although to some degree, yes, but it's got a little bit more nuance to that. So what I'm trying to get people to do with this prioritization level is really understanding what they are doing that is contributing to the bottom line of the business. And there's different ways of contributing to the bottom line, like I had said just a little bit earlier. So this is either bringing in sales, decreasing costs, or increasing that net profit margin. So the idea is if you label something as priority 1, it's a task that both directly brings in money to the business and is something that's highly specialized / only you can do. So meaning something that would be essentially impossible to delegate and also not very responsible to delegate to somebody else. Priority 2 is a task that either brings in money to the business or is highly specialized. So just one of those 2 elements, not both of them. Priority 3 is a task that needs to get done so that you don't lose money or pay money unnecessarily. So going a little bit further down in the list of directly contributing to the business's bottom line, but more in the space of like, does this just end up wasting money or increasing costs unnecessarily? And then priority 4 is a task that is simply a part of the business operations, but just doesn't fall into these other categories. So this is more like the daily operations thing. So cleaning, going to the bank, putting on tags, that kind of stuff. So that's the part of sort of thinking through what is the priority level of the different tasks that you're doing. And I think it is a really helpful exercise to assign those priorities because it will give you clarity of what is it that you're doing as a business owner that contributes to the bottom line? And then what does your staff do that contributes to the bottom line? And then the third label here is what I call a value rating. So the exercise of assigning these value ratings helps to really give clarity on how you should structure your day. So the 3 different labels, and actually Tessa was helpful in adding the third one, So the idea is that, is it energy giving? Is it energy draining, or just energy neutral, that it's not adding or taking away to your kind of energy supply as the business owner? So when I say energy giving, I say when you complete the task, are you pumped up and ready to go on to another task? Something that just is really like, this is why I do this work, that kind of feeling. Energy draining is something that when you complete the task, are you wiped out and want to take a nap? And then energy neutral is neither of the above, incites no particular emotion in you. Um, so again, the idea is that you can like take the information that you're learning from these different energy assessments, and then be intentional in how you structure the day, so that you don't like wipe yourself out first thing in the morning and then you don't have any momentum to continue to do stuff through the rest of the day. So yeah, so this is just the sort of the initial time tracker piece, where you're just, like I said, listing all the things that you've done for a couple weeks and then putting those labels on them. So then from there, you go over into this, the planning portion of things, where you're trying to be intentional in how you schedule out your day. And we'll talk about this when we get to Tessa's stuff, but she's done something really cool with taking this consistent activities portion and dividing it up into, these are Mondays, this is Monday's list of consistent things, this is Tuesdays, this is Wednesdays, right? So essentially what you would do is you'd be toggling back and forth between these two tabs, the time tracker and planning and prioritizing. And so now you're making up, a list of things that you do on, whether it's a daily or weekly or a monthly basis. So first you would identify what is the frequency of the activity. So my example here is, making a to-do list is something that you do every day. That's just, and so then you would say, what category of the business does that go into? That would just go into daily operations. Then you think through, what is the day and time, day of the week or time of the day that the activity is best accomplished. So I've got two different options here. One is it best, you could make your to-do list first thing in the morning, or you could do it as the last task of the day prior to starting prior to ending that day's activities. But that way you're kind of like ready for the next morning and centered. And then you just kind of write in there the length of time. And then, so here's where it gets fun, is I've got this programmed to help you kind of think through the process of like, do I have something that is a high priority? So priority 1 or priority 2, but is energy giving or energy draining for me, right? So the way this works is like, let's say that this is a number 1 priority, which I don't necessarily think it is, but I would probably put this as, as number 3, as a priority 3, but let's say it was a priority item, right? Priority 1 item. It changes to a different color based on whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then if it's something that is energy giving, that lights up green. But let's say this was a task that was actually energy draining for you. Now both of them have turned red, because the idea is that, okay, if these are both red, then we're going to want to make sure that we are thoughtful in where we put this in our day. So this is just a visual reminder with the different colors, and then these the double red block that's like, okay, let me make sure that I'm, I can't delegate this to somebody else, because it's either it's both specialized and brings in money to the bottom line. So let me make sure that, I'm doing it at a time that's going to be helpful for me. So yeah, so this is where you just go through and and this will take a little bit of time, right? Because you're basically planning out daily and weekly tasks for that are consistent things that are happening all the time that you need to do. So that's that portion. And then down here is that obviously there's many tasks that you do that's just like a one-time thing, right? So let's say you wanted to make a training document for new managers to onboard them, right? So I would call this training document for managers, and then you put the explanation in here, for onboarding schedule and associated docs. Now, what category? This is going to be in the HR category. This part here, I think this is really helpful, again, in that idea of thinking of what are you doing as the business owner, and how is it contributing to the bottom line? what is your definition of success here in terms of revenue increasing, fixed cost decreasing, or net profit increasing. So in this case, I would say that if you have a better training process, you have hopefully less turnover, right? So that would decrease costs because it costs a lot of money to have turnover. Now, so this is a planned finish date for the whole project. So let's say I want to finish this by, the end of the month. And then here again with the same thing where you're identifying the priority rating, and then the value rating of what that activity is. So then even in something like this, there's going to be a bunch of different steps to that. So that's where the project planning task tab comes in, is that you can just write manager onboarding training doc. You're trying to make that, and then you would list out the different steps that will be required to do that, and then you can schedule out the dates for when you want to accomplish each of those tasks. So the idea is that you would take this, like the information from this project planning outline, and then over here from the consistent activities, and this becomes the structure of what your week looks like. Yeah, so some things that I thought have been interesting anecdotes as I've spoken with clients who have used the tool in their business is that they've I had one woman who had used it for a while, and she said, it had been she and a partner who had been running the business for a long time, and she said, I basically realized that everything that had been my responsibilities versus what was my partner's responsibilities, like all the things that I was doing were energy draining for me, and all the things that my partner was doing were energy giving for me. And her partner had left, and she had been trying to figure out how to restructure stuff. And did she need to bring in another partner? Did she need to just hire a manager? What was the need? But this was really helpful in giving her clarity on the fact that she wanted to restructure what her role was, and then thus what the other person's role was, who was going to be helping her kind of run the business operation. So I thought that was really interesting. She was like, I never would have known that because I just was doing the things that I, had started doing in the beginning, and the chips had kind of fell that way. And I'd never stopped to really look at it and assess, was I enjoying those activities? Was I energized by them? So that's one thing that I think is really valuable. Another thing that, and Tessa will sort of speak to this, but the idea of using this in the process of bringing somebody else on and understanding what to delegate and how to delegate those different tasks to somebody else. This is really helpful because theoretically, you would want to be making sure that you, the business owner, are keeping those tasks that are the most highly specialized and do have the most direct connection to the bottom line, right? That those things would need to become your job descriptions. And some of those priority 3 and priority 4 items are things that you can then delegate to somebody else. And then this would essentially become the beginning of a job description for another person, right? But I think it's really valuable to go through the process first of thinking through these different elements of what you're doing, and then use that information to structure somebody else's job. So I'm gonna hop back over here, and so I'm gonna bring Tessa, if you want to turn your camera on and microphone, and I'm just gonna. Yeah, we can just kind of jump in and chat about stuff here. So Tessa Maxwell is the executive director of Orchardview Stables in Pennsylvania. And yes, so she's obviously used this tool, as I've mentioned. And I'm just going to show some of these quick slides that give just a snapshot of some of the different ways that you've used the tool. And then we're just going to have a casual question and answer thing to sort of share how it's worked for her.
Okay.
So this is just an example of where she took all of the different tasks, after you had tracked them, and then put them into this kind of laundry list of when am I doing these things on a weekly or daily or monthly basis. And so you'll see she's added over here, this is where the day of the week is. And then there's another spreadsheet, which I can pull up, but where she separated it out, these are Monday's tasks, these are Tuesday's tasks, Wednesdays, with the priorities and the value rating and everything. but I mean, and this is just one small portion of it, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that you're doing. Yeah. And so then this was another tool that you had sort of added. And that's what I love about this, is that you've taken it and really made it your own, is you've taken this again in that space of like, what are you doing as the business owner? And then what are you delegating to the people that are now working with you? So I will, maybe I'll just stop sharing here for a second so we can see our faces a little bigger. But then I can pull up, I'll pull up the spreadsheets as you think it would be helpful to reference them. But yeah, so why don't you start just by sharing with us what the process of starting to use the tool, like what that was like for you.
Yes, so the tool came at a perfect time for me, because we were I was in a place where I was becoming very overwhelmed with everything that I had to do, because we're a fairly new organization and there's only 2 of us that are paid staff full time. So we have a lot of volunteers, and which are essentially like employees or staff. So I was really getting overwhelmed. And when I become overwhelmed, my first instinct is to just kind of push things aside. And like you said, do the things that are easy. And so things were getting, left behind that were necessary. So I felt like this was good to get me kind of back on track and to prioritize my day and things for the business. So the 2 weeks in the beginning where I tracked all of the tasks and the time it took a lot of time, but I felt like it was really necessary to be detailed, because if I didn't get everything in on that list, then, certain things would fall behind again. So I started with that. And then, of course, the energy giving, the priorities, that was really important, especially for me, because like I said, with volunteers, people will say, well, just get volunteers to do this or get volunteers to do that, but it's not that easy, unfortunately. So knowing what I could delegate and what I should do myself. And then on the other side of that, knowing, and this ties into the energy giving, knowing where my strengths were, where I could really, the business could benefit from me doing things, versus if I could delegate it to someone who is better at that than I am, then that really is more efficient for the business. So, so that was how I started the process. And just, it's been an ongoing process of revising, and still I'm not to the point where I feel like it's set. I don't know that it'll ever be set, because as things come up or the business grows, I just readjust, or, or as people come in that have other skill sets that we could really benefit from, then I can revisit it. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, totally. So when I guess maybe during that first 2-week period when you were starting to track everything, and then kind of going through and adding the labels to things, what do you feel like were the kind of the initial like wins or surprise lessons, like things that you that you kind of hadn't expected, but helped to provide some clarity? Like what were some of those things that popped up initially?
One of the big things was where my estimation of how long things would take versus how long they actually took to complete a task. That was one thing that I was really surprised about, because I would think, oh, that'll only take a few minutes. But then once you get into it, it takes more than just a few minutes. The other thing is when you're interrupted, for me, I have a hard time getting back into that task. So trying to schedule things where I have the least amount of interruptions was helpful. The other thing was the energy giving and energy draining. if I scheduled something energy giving, because I work into the evenings, energy giving in the evening, then I couldn't turn my brain off when it was time to go to bed, just things like that you don't really think about. You just kind of go through your day and do what needs to be done. So, and then things fall through the cracks. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the energy giving, the draining thing it's so interesting because like the experience that I'd had that was part of what made me create that element of it was remembering like when I would do staff trainings, it would take me usually like 3 hours to do like a whole staff training with a new employee that I was onboarding. And I would get to the end of those 3 hours after having just talked at somebody for several hours. And I would be like, just totally wiped out in a way that almost nothing else that I did caused that, that I felt that way. And so I learned just to schedule those trainings at the end of the day, because then I could just go home and be done with it, whether it was a long day, or I just shortened my day and was like, okay, I'm going to be done when I finish this, because it was nearly impossible to get myself to go back to the desk and start getting into some other task after I had done that,
Yes.
And I think in so many cases, it's like we try and force ourselves, like we think we should do this, or we should finish this number of things in the day, or this is when we should do it. And it's like part of what I think in business ownership is that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So we need to help ourselves out. Right. And so that's, I do think it's valuable in saying like, when can I do these things best so that I can come back again to the next day, the next year, the next decade kind of thing. So that it's like, be nice to yourself along the way.
Right. And I totally agree, because that was the thing. I mean, we were becoming, our business was ruling our lives to the point where it's like, okay, we can't keep doing this. We're either going to get burned out and have to just throw in the towel, or, we need to be smart about it and make sure that the business is sustainable for us, for everybody else that's involved in it. And so that was where we were at. And it really helped to kind of, even though it took time to start, it was so beneficial. And it also gave me confidence in knowing that, things are planned and organized. And I mean, I think most business owners and entrepreneurs are like go-getters, and they're just like, just do what needs to be done. And that you can only do that for so long, because then you're the rest of your life kind of struggles. So
yeah. I mean, I have like many conversations with clients who are trying to sort of say like, how do I know if I'm doing this well? How do I know if I'm successful? Because like even looking at a profit and loss report is not a simple thing, and nor is it the only indicator of financial success of the business, right? It's more complicated than even just that. And so I do think this idea of looking through the list of all the things that you've put together and making sure that you do have something in finances, you do have some time in HR, you have time set aside for marketing, like that will help to know that you are touching on all those parts of the business that need to be attended to. And some like that will help you from just leaning into the things that you have that already set up expertise in, I mean, have you found that as you've like put those different categories on the work that you've done to sort of check like the overall balance of have I missed something,
Yes, because the priority ratings, the high priority items are the items that you usually take care of right away. And it's those lower priority items that seem to stack up and fall between the cracks. And it seems like you said before, the daily operations, those might not be a high priority, but if you ignore the daily cleaning for days, then you've got a major priority. So it really does help to make sure things are somewhat equal, across the board in the categories, and making sure that all of the priorities, because they're on the list for a reason, that they are necessary. It's just making sure that you have the ability to get it done, or can call in some people to help get it done or whatever. So
yeah. So I know that you've like taken this, and there's been different iterations with sort of how you've used it, and also that you have used it for sure in the process of bringing on some like intentional volunteers to do some of the administrative stuff. So like talk about how that has grown and where that's at now, and then just some of the stuff that you'd shared as far as like what you're doing on the computer versus what you have in paper, like as a kind of a blank template. Like share how you're using that.
Yes. So, like I said before, it's not so easy just to get a volunteer just to do whatever, because they need training just like a staff person would. So having this list of tasks, and I feel like coming up with a job description and training new people, hiring new people, all of that in and of itself is extremely overwhelming to me. So this list just makes it more manageable, and everything's there. It's just putting it into other lists, basically. So I was able to take the tasks that I had planned to delegate, and then the volunteers that wanted to help with office work or whatever it was, then I was able to kind of match them up with those tasks and then go right from there and create training documents. So if I had somebody coming in to work in the office on like tracking our program attendance or whatever, I could take those tasks and then write out more details so that I could walk them through it, and everything that those involve. So then along with that, I have like daily checklists of what their tasks are for me and for them. So that was really helpful, because not only is it, I mean, it helps productivity, because everybody likes when your routine is predictable, and when you can check stuff off your list, it just helps create more productivity. And so it helped give me confidence that things were covered, and it helped give them confidence that they knew what was expected. They know what to do. So it's, helping, the less that they have to come to me and ask, what do I do with this? Or, and there's going to be those situations, but if we can kind of iron those things out, then I have less interruptions, they have less interruptions, and everybody's more efficient. So that was very helpful. And so, and that's another thing. We have started that, but I have a lot more work to do with that too. So, yeah.
So let me pull up a couple of the other documents that I've got from you, because I think this will be cool for people to see. Just sort of how you've structured some of this stuff. So this is your, like, these are some consistent, but then also some project-based tasks. So
I think that was maybe sorted by the categories. That's why.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yep.
That's why it was really helpful for me to put it in a spreadsheet, so I could sort it however I wanted. I could sort out the delegated, the consistent, project, depending on what I needed it for. So.
Yeah. So, okay. So that, we've got all the different sort of categories like separated here, right? And then you did that, and then you made it this by day, where these are the things that happen on Mondays, on some consistent, but then also some project basis. And then on to Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So yeah, I mean, it's just like, this is like, when you looked at this, were you like, holy crap, how do I do that many things?
Yes. Yeah. I did. But some of them are easy things to check off, like, you know, running to the post office or whatever. Like I put so much detail onto this because I just didn't want to miss anything. So it looks like a lot, but there are a lot of smaller things, and there are bigger things too. But yeah, it really, when you see it all together, that's why I liked breaking it down by day. My job is seasonal too. It changes from month to month. So that's another reason why I have to have this available to revise depending on the month. So being able to do that is helpful, and putting things all on, like, as you can see on this one with Wednesdays, I put mainly marketing type tasks. So that way I was kind of in that mode and could, you know, be more effective and productive.
Right. Yeah. Rather than jumping around from different one category to another one. Yeah.
And so what I did was I put the notes at the bottom section, just because as I'm working through things, if I need to change something around, or if I find like this is more energy draining than it is energy giving, why, or just I write everything down. So and I print them out, because for me, having paper, pencil type things is helpful. Where I know some people like to do things more online.
Yeah, just a question of preference. Something that you had said that I thought was interesting is that, you know, on that amount of time that it takes you to complete different tasks, you saw that when you were doing it on a more consistent basis, it took less time each time you came back to that thing, right?
Right.
And you were able to say, okay, you know, as I'm scheduling my day, I only need to give 30 minutes for this activity, because when I do it once a week, I can get it done more efficiently. But then there are other things that you're like, I only do this particular activity on a quarterly basis, getting ready for a board meeting, right? So that by nature just takes you longer. So you know to allot that amount of time for that activity that doesn't happen as frequently.
Right.
Because I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
And in the beginning, I have more project tasks on there than I would once I'm using this. I mean, I've been using it, but there's project items that I need to get done and then may never have to do it again for, I don't know, forever, how long, like creating the training documents. And there's other things that just is a project, but once that's done, then, and creating different systems and routines is the big thing.
Right. That it falls off, you know, the list at that point. Yeah, I'm pulling up. Oh, sorry about that. Here we go. I'm gonna do your. So, okay, so this is the one where your tasks versus the delegation tasks. So is this something that you do change from week to week as far as what you're giving off to the other folks in the administration portion?
Yes, so that's why that's blank, because we're just ending our busy season. And when I got into this in, I think it was June, I can't remember when I started the process of keeping track of all the tasks, but in June, I had this pretty much the way I wanted it. And at that time, I didn't have the volunteers trained to do everything that I wanted them to do. So my time was limited to train them. So instead of having them do all the tasks that normally would be delegated, we started with like one little chunk at a time. Like I could train them for 1 hour on whatever day it was. And that task they would then do independently. So being able to train them to do things independently a little bit at a time was really helpful for me. Now, I don't know that that would really be beneficial for a for-profit business because, you know, you don't want to be paying people when they're not doing what, you know, as much as they should. So for me, that works, fortunately, but then you would just have to put the time into training them up front.
Right. Well, but also, I mean, there is like, there's a lot of, I think, truth to what you're saying as far as how somebody can learn best. And if there's, you know, like if you can break down the information into smaller chunks and do it to where they can learn about it, master one element of it, and then build from there. I think that's actually, you know, it's very effective. It just depends like what the, you know, what that particular job is, if you have the ability to do that or not. So, okay, I'm gonna stop sharing, kind of go back to home base here. So I guess like if you could sum up, what do you feel like the most valuable benefits to the business that you've received from going through this exercise? That certainly has, you know, it has required some time, but like tell us why you think it's valuable to devote that time to this process.
I think for our organization, the big goal, like I said before, is sustainability. And this is an integral part of keeping the business sustainable, especially too, because it's not just about me or anybody else in the business. I mean, we provide a service for people that benefit from it. So it's important that we stay sustainable for them, for donors that invest in our organization, and then for us too. So that's the big piece, is this is helping the business be more effective and helping us be more effective and then keeping it sustainable. So I would think that's, I think the major benefit, but it helps my emotional well-being, which in turn helps my family's emotional well-being, my coworkers, which my coworker is my mom. So when we don't have great emotional well-being, then that's difficult in multiple areas of our lives. So it's good.
Amen. Yeah. I hear that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it really helps give confidence to myself and to the people that are working with me. So that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think that you said that was really valuable was, and I think is helpful to share with with the folks listening here, is the idea of like, as you were going through this process, I know you said having a coach or somebody to kind of come back to from like an accountability perspective, and then potentially just like a different perspective on the situation, right? Like an outside view of things, that was helpful, in really like kind of getting
because there, I think had I not had someone that kept me accountable, I may not have followed through as far as I have, because, we get caught up in the daily stuff. And I mean, that's what business owners do. So I think it's really, really, really important to say that just coming back to it, I know it takes a long time, but it's so beneficial. The benefits will definitely help. I mean, it's definitely worth the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's good to hear that,
Yes.
It really is. Yeah.
Because it affects all aspects of the business. And like I said, it affects your emotional well-being. So,
yeah. I know I've got a couple questions here in the question thing, so I'm going to finish up this little guy here.
Yeah, just making me more efficient. That also is helpful, because as business owners, if you feel like you're not efficient, which I'm sure we all struggle with that, like, I got to get this done and this done. You get to the end of your day and you're like, I still have so much to do. But if you're able to look at this and say, well, I was efficient today. Our to-do lists are never, ever done. So being able to put work aside and know that you've done what you needed to do for the day is so helpful. So,
that's a very good point. You know, and again, in this sort of metaphor of this is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, it's that how do you allow yourself to sort of like finish at the end of the day and relax and you know, like, because you have to make up something that's going to make you feel fine about that, right? Like you have to make up your own structure.
right.
So yeah.
And at any other job, this is done for you. So that's where, you know, I think, like I said, business owners, entrepreneurs, we're creative people, and this is an opportunity to use that creativeness, but also have structure with it and then be efficient.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so this here, I, you know, just kind of summed up like what is the investment, and then what's the, you know, what's the benefit. And I think we've touched on sort of all of these things as well as even more than that, you know. But the last one, or benefit, the opportunity to engage or develop another member of your team, which can lead to increased retention. I think that is like, that is also another, you know, surprise benefit of this. And I would even venture to add having, you know, a more intentional job description, and thus more accurate training documents that connect with what that job description is also really valuable, because, you know, particularly if you're creating a new position, it's just a hard thing for an organization to do. And it's a hard thing for a new person to walk into when they don't know exactly what the expectations are. And so this, I think, can really help make it so that you have a better chance of having success with a new position and a new person in that role. Yeah, so I'm gonna check and see what we've got in the chat box here. And now I had somebody who, yeah, Alethea says, you know, I do the same thing when I become overwhelmed. I think she mentioned this when you were talking about, you know, when you feel overwhelmed and kind of what the response is, which, you know, I do think there are so many commonalities in this experience as small business owners. And what I think is interesting is that we can feel so lonely because it's like we're not talking to our boss, like you're saying, right? Somebody isn't telling us what to do and how to do it and what the definition of success is. And so what has been cool about this work that I've gotten to do is to connect with so many different business owners and say, yeah, like this is cross industry. You know, it doesn't matter if you have staff or if you work by yourself, if you work with volunteers like you do, you know, that there are real consistencies to how this, you know, to how this goes. And so that there are things that you can do to help yourself. So I'm going to read, I've got a question here from Chris, who says, this seems like a great tool and really useful. I often get stuck in the task itself and don't hold myself accountable. I have found that I need an accountability partner to make these tools truly useful. Can you talk about how you've applied this from an accountability standpoint? So you just aren't talking to yourself and creating more tasks for yourself. And then he adds that he's a solo entrepreneur. So I think definitely resonating with this, like, it's lonely at the top kind of sentiment. I mean, and Chris, I'll throw it out there for you and for anybody else. This is, you know, work that I do with my clients, right? So it's like, show you the tool, and then maybe we meet up once a month and kind of go over what you've done, how you've done it, and then have that outside set of eyes to take a look at, you know, what you're doing, and to make sure you haven't missed anything, and then to kind of say, okay, like this thing is energy draining and a high priority item. When do you think it would be most effective to add that into your day? You know,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
if I could just add, it was extremely helpful for me to have a business coach help with looking at it from like an overall picture, because I tend to get lost in the details and get lost in the weeds and focus on like, and get stuck on things. So being able to have someone else look at it and say, well, you've got like 10 hours on this day and 4 hours on this day. And did you realize that, this is, this way or whatever. I think that was really helpful because, and because like you said, as entrepreneurs, we don't have a boss that's like, yep, you're doing a good job, keep going, or maybe change this or that. So having someone that can encourage you, maybe give different suggestions, or they, like Ann said, oh, I know this person is restructuring their business because of this. Just having other ideas is having a fresh pair of eyes look at it, rather than when you're looking at it every day.
Totally. I mean, this makes me think of this quote that I heard a long time ago it was a grandmaster in chess, and he was talking about business and being an entrepreneur. He obviously was a pretty smart guy. And he said, as a small business owner, you are your own worst enemy. So any blind spot that you have as an individual becomes the blind spot of the business. So anything that you can do to create or increase your own self-awareness is not only going to benefit you as an individual, but will also benefit the business. And I think that this exercise is really something tangible that you can do to get to increased awareness on some of these things. So yeah. I've got my info on the last slide here, so I'll leave this up so that anybody who is interested in getting the tool, you just have to send me an email and I will send it your way. And then that's my calendar. If you're wanting to schedule a one-on-one with me, you just pop on there and find a time that works for you. It's real easy to schedule that. And then I guess before we wrap up, Tessa, do you have any other final thoughts or tidbits that you want the audience listening here to catch?
I don't think so. I think I've pretty much said everything. It's just overall beneficial to use this. I know we've benefited from it, and I have personally, so I'm just very much an advocate for using it. So
yeah,
it's definitely worth the effort. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I super appreciate you taking the time, today, and then just in general, the way that you've committed to this process, and I'm excited that you found benefit from it. So a note to all of our listeners here, like I said, reach out if you're interested in the tool. We, as business coaches with the SBDC, we do a lot of work with stuff like this, but also with helping businesses get started, with helping them get loans if they're in a growth process or expansion. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things that we can do, and we're a free to the client, no cost to the client coaching service, funded through the Small Business Administration and some other university and government partners. So we're excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity to connect with so many business owners and provide some assistance. So I think a quick reminder about the survey at the end that will pop up once we finish up here in just a second, and then it will also get emailed to you. So we'd love your all's thoughts, suggestions. We take all that stuff to heart and tweak things as we get feedback. So we just appreciate your time. And again, Tessa, I super appreciate your commitment and your time to this process. So
no, I appreciate you bringing the tool to my attention. It's been very helpful. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I hope everyone out there enjoys the rest of their Tuesday. And yeah, we appreciate you joining us today. So
All right.
thank you so much. Yeah.